All right. We are going to be talking about the growth mindset or a mindset for success. Right. So we'll be talking a little bit about what the definition of the growth mindset is, a little bit of research behind it, and how you can develop a growth mindset. Right. So for many people, the brain is a mystery, right? They know it's that organ inside their skull and it helps with thinking, but, not a whole lot of classes or there's not a lot of times where people really go into depth about how the brain works, which is interesting because we use it every day. And so they don't realize how intelligence works when it comes to the brain or how you can grow your skills in relation to learning and your brain. Right. So, many people believe that a person is born dumb or they're born average or smart, and that's just the way it's going to be, right? That's how it stays for life. And there's not really a whole lot that you can do about it, right? It's predestined, it's written in the stars that this is the level of intelligence you are born with, and that's all you're ever going to have. Fortunately, research has shown that that's not the case, right? That the brain does get stronger the more you use it. It is like a muscle. There are parts of your brain that when those parts of the brain are used more, those parts of the brain actually do get larger. And so a big part of this has to do with your mindset. A person's mindset can determine how successful they are at growing intelligence and skills. Right? But before we get into a whole lot more detail, let's talk about the definition of a mindset. So, what is a mindset? A mindset they're ideas and attitudes with which a person approaches a situation. Basically, the way you look at the world, right? And the way you interact with the world. And your mindset is shaped by people, experience, and the environments in which we were uh, raised, right? So if you think kind of like the way the river carves its path through the environment, your mindset was kind of guided and navigated through people, experience, and environments, right? So if you're spent your whole life living with people who are always negative, always experiencing negative experiences, and living in environment that does not support you or is toxic, then chances are your mindset, you're going to be very suspicious of the world. You're going to have a very negative mindset, right? And there's always hope for people, with this kind of mindset, right? And we're going to learn how you can turn those things around just by learning a few things about your brain. Right. So mindsets affect the way we relate to people, experience, and other mindsets. Right. So it's not just the way you view the world, but a lot of times your mindset also is going to affect how people interact and view you. Right. So we are going to be focusing on these mindsets. Again, it's just the way you view the world and essentially the way the world views you. And so we're going to be focusing on two types of mindsets today. We're going to be talking about a fixed mindset and the growth mindset. A fixed mindset, as you can see right here, it is static, right? Something that is static does not change. It is like a rock, right? Yeah, just like a stone or a rock. And so, not a lot of ability to change. But when you have a growth mindset, that growth mindset is more, it's malleable, right? And something that is malleable, you can shape it, you can mold it, kind of like a lump of clay, right? So static and the fixed mindset is just kind of stuck, right? It's fixed and there's not a whole lot of um, ability to change the abilities and intelligence and your brain, basically, right? That's what people who have that fixed mindset believe, that it's static and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. Fortunately for us, science research supports this growth mindset that our brain is malleable, that our intelligence can grow, and that our skills can grow, right? And a lot of that just comes with effort. And so I really like this comic strip right here. It's a Calvin and Hobbes comic strip, and it kind of illustrates the difference between a fixed mindset person and a growth mindset person. So here you have Calvin and Susie. Susie goes to Calvin, "What happened to you?" Calvin responds, "Hobbes and I had a frank exchange of ideas." And he says, "What are you doing? Homework?" She's like, "I wasn't sure I understood this chapter, so I reviewed my notes from the last chapter, and now I'm rereading this." And he goes, "Huh, you do all that work?" She's like, "Well, now I understand it." "Huh, I used to think that you were smart." And so that kind of right there illustrates the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset person, right? The fixed mindset person believes, again, that you're either born with it or you're not, and that there's nothing you can really do about it. And you're just kind of stuck with that level of intelligence or those level of skills. And Susie knows that's not the case, right? If you don't know something, if you are kind of weak in a certain area, if you go back, if you put in some effort and you relearn those things and kind of ingrain it into your brain, then you will get better at something, right? And that's kind of, again, Calvin here is the definition of a fixed mindset person, and Susie has a growth mindset. And so here you see the main differences between the two mindsets. So a fixed mindset person, their ability is static, right? That's whatever abilities or intelligence you're born with, that's all you're ever going to get. And there's nothing you can do about it. So why even try? Right? This is how a fixed mindset person thinks. Whereas a growth mindset person, they know their ability is developed over time, and it just takes some effort to grow that those skills or that intelligence. A fixed mindset person, they avoid challenges because, again, they're either born with it or they're not. And if they struggle at something, then it means that they're not good at it and they're never going to get good at it. And so why try, right? Whereas the growth mindset person, they embrace those challenges because they know it is that challenge that is getting out of that comfort zone. That is what is growing them. That is what is developing them, right? And so it is work, right? It is effort to take on those challenges, but that is how you get better. That's how you improve. A fixed mindset person, they give up easily, right? Again, what is the point? What is, why exert all this effort if this is just the way I'm going to be for the rest of my life? But a growth mindset person, they persist in obstacles because they know if I don't succeed the first time, let me try again. And if I don't succeed that time, let me adapt and try again until I do get through this obstacle, right? This hurdle or this barrier. Um, and so that is a growth mindset person. That's how they grow. A fixed mindset person sees effort as fruitless. Again, why try if this is just the way I'm going to be and there's no point to trying? A growth mindset person, you'll see this word effort comes in a lot when you're talking about the growth mindset because it's all about that effort, right? If you keep trying something over and over and you learn from your mistakes and you adapt, that is how you get better. That is how you improve. A fixed mindset person, they will ignore useful criticism. A fixed mindset person does not really, again, they feel like they're either born with those skills or intelligence or they're not. And if someone is criticizing them, they believe that it is they're more concerned with looking smart than with actually growing, right? So if you're giving someone useful criticism, that is kind of that's not really going to sink in if you're trying to help someone because they're not interested in that criticism. They're more interested in just looking smart, right? Whereas a growth mindset person, this person embraces that criticism, right? It all depends. If you have someone who's looking out for you, trying to help you out, then yeah, definitely take that criticism. If it's someone who you know is just trying to bring you down and always being negative, definitely be careful with that feedback. But if it's someone that's looking out for you, has your best interests in mind, then there's no reason not to accept that criticism, right? You should actually be seeking it out because it is that feedback, that criticism that is going to make you better. Without that criticism, a lot of times you don't know what your faults are, and so you never learn and you never improve. The fixed mindset person, they're threatened by others. And a growth mindset person are inspired by other success. Right. So I always think of this author, the author of this research, Carol Dweck. She, in her book, the Growth Mindset book, she talks about an experience where her husband and her were at a ranch, right? And they were there vacationing and they had some fly fishing going on. And so it was her husband and a group of men. And of all the people who were there fly fishing, she was the only one who caught a fish. Right. And so, the other kind, the husband didn't catch anything. The other men there in at the fishing, while they were fishing, didn't catch anything. And so later she mentions that they were at dinner and it was her husband and her and then the group of men that had gone fishing the group of men go to her husband and they're kind of like, oh, I kind of feel sorry for you, like, you must feel a little embarrassed because your wife caught this fish and you didn't. And it just kind of it struck him like, no, that wasn't even, on the forefront of that wasn't anywhere in my mind. I was so happy for her. I was so thrilled that I love her and she caught the fish. And so I wasn't threatened by that. I was happy, and it was just interesting how the same situation was interpreted two different ways by two groups of people. And so that just kind of goes to show you that, you can be a growth mindset in one area of your life. So maybe like in their studies or their education, they had a growth mindset, but you can also have a fixed or growth mindset when it comes to a different part of your life, like relationships, right? So that growth or fixed mindset can carry on into different parts of your life, your career, your parenting, your love life, all of these things. You can have a growth or a fixed mindset in different areas. So the cool thing is that the growth mindset is supported by research. Research shows that the brain has more plasticity than ever imagined, which is really cool. And plasticity, when you think of plastic, not the hardened plastic, but when plastic is still hot and it's able to be bent, shaped, and molded, that is what we're talking about when we're talking about plasticity. The brain's ability to reshape itself, to kind of rewire itself to make up for sometimes damage to the brain, but also just when it comes to growing your brain. Intelligence can be grown through learning. And so research has shown that it's not necessarily what you're born with, it's how much you're willing to put in to studying something, to learning something. And this isn't always the case. There are some barriers, mental disabilities, things like that, that that prevent people from reaching the levels of other people. But you don't know how far you can go if you quit before you even get anywhere, right? So intelligence can be grown through learning. There is this part in her book, Dr. Dweck's book, where she shows these images of artists, of not artists, but they were just people who drew something for the first time, right? They painted something or they sketched something, and it wasn't that great. She gave them, I think it was 2 weeks worth of lessons, and there was just a significant change in the artwork that these people were producing, right? So even just a little bit of learning a certain thing and practicing it can make a huge difference, right? And persistence during obstacles is key and outstanding achievement. Again, if you quit every time you are pushed out of your comfort zone, then you really don't know how high you can climb, right? Or how much you can achieve. And so if you persist in these obstacles, that is what elevates you to that next level, right? It pushes you out of your comfort zone. And so now you can actually do things that you couldn't do before, right? That is what learning, that's what growing, that's what developing is. And so here I had a video, but I can't play it here because it is a YouTube video and I will get flagged for this. But it basically is this what you see right here, right? So in these images, what you're seeing is the growth mindset, right? So here you see, and let's kind of wait till we get to this part right here. So I should have started with this right away, but neurons communicate through a complex network of pathways. Neurons are your brain cells. And here you can see these are the parts of the neurons right here, kind of connecting with each other. The more often you do something, the stronger that pathway becomes, right? So you learn or experiences something new, and your brain will form a new route. And there you see, kind of mindfulness can rewire and strengthen your brain's most important pathways. And so this is kind of what you see right here in this image. Also, one pathway is getting thicker and the other one is getting thinner, right? And that's what happens. If you think negatively all the time, then that pathway in your brain, those neural pathways, are going to get thicker and thicker and thicker. And it's going to be hard to think any other way but negatively, right? But if you make that effort to start thinking more positively, then eventually those pathways in your brains that have to do with the positivity will strengthen and strengthen. And over time, those negative pathways will weaken and weaken. And you can actually change your outlook on life, right? Make things more positive. Same thing with other skills. Think about a time when you tried something like a new skill, right? Or even like I like gaming, right? Sometimes you play a video game and you start off and you're just losing and losing, and then eventually, the more you do it, the better you get. The you can't even think about how you started off, right? You've gotten so much better that it's hard to think about when you were a noob or a newbie at that game, right? So this is why that happens, right? And so more examples of plasticity or research backing up the growth mindset is mice. Mice's brains are similar to ours in certain ways, and so they're often studied when they're trying to learn more about not just their brain but human brains. And mice have been shown that when they're in a stimulating environment, they had larger brains than those who were just locked in a cage all day. right? And this is kind of sad when you think about, but this also happens to people, right? So there are some, like especially children in certain orphanages or foster care, they don't get the mental stimulation that others do, right? And there's been studies that have shown this. Same thing with people who are incarcerated, right? They're just their lack of mental stimulation is just very apparent, right? And they do things like read and exercise, things like that. But it just makes a big difference when you have a stimulating environment and the development of the brain. Here's another example of plasticity. Cab drivers have enlarged hippocampus, right? Have been shown to have an enlarged hippocampus in their brains and superb spatial memories. And this is because this is a part of the brain that focuses on reading maps and navigating, right? And so if you spend your good portion of your life doing these things, what scientists have seen is that those parts of the brain are actually enlarged compared to the average person, because the more you use a neural pathway, the thicker that pathway gets, right? So it's like a muscle, right? The more you work out a certain muscles of your body, the bigger those muscles get. And so you are strengthening those pathways, or cab drivers are strengthening those pathways because they use those pathways often, right? So if you've ever said something like, well, I'm not very good at this, well, then you got to ask yourself, how often do you practice that thing, right? How much effort do you put into that thing? I have students all the time, adult students, who tell me that they are not very good at reading, right? Or they're not good at writing. And I ask them, well, how often do you read? And the answer is like, well, never. So, you can't really quit something and say you're not good at it if you've never really given it much effort. So another example that I was reading about recently was Christopher Reeve. He severed a spinal cord from his brain when he was horseback riding, and he refused to give up and began an exercise program with the help of electrical stimulation, right? So he began to regain movement and opened up a whole new avenue of research. It wasn't a whole lot of movement that he regained, and he never recovered his ability to uh, move significantly below his neck. But he did do things that people thought were impossible before. And basically, he was rewiring his brain to connect with the rest of his body. And yeah, this is more example, more research that supports a growth mindset and the brain's ability to grow and reshape itself. Plasticity, right? Neuroplasticity, or brain cell plasticity. All right, y'all. So I mentioned this word earlier, effort, right? Who needs effort? This is what separates a fixed mindset person from a growth mindset person, is effort, right? A fixed mindset person, they make no effort to learn something new if they might make mistakes. Because again, it's not about growing or learning for a fixed mindset person. It's about looking smart or not looking dumb, right? And so they make no effort to correct mistakes. Instead, they try to hide them because, again, it's about looking smart and not looking dumb, and not about growing. They fear effort because effort makes them feel dumb. Ability should bring success all by itself. So, kind of like the comic strip we saw earlier with Calvin, he was kind of knocking Susie for having to study and reread something when that is how we learn, right? But for him, that kind of made her look a little dumb because she should have just known these things, right? She should have been born with it. And so when a fixed mindset person hits a setback in school or at work, right, they decrease their efforts and consider doing unethical things like cheating, right? Since the fixed intelligence idea, it leaves no way to improve, right? If you're born this way and there's nothing you can do about it, then what other choice do you have but to cheat, right? And so again, fixed mindset people, not a lot of effort involved there. A growth mindset person, right? They make an effort to learn because they care about learning. It's that learning and that growing and that developing part that is important to them. And when they make a mistake or find a deficiency, they make the effort to correct it, right? Failure is one of the greatest teachers. And if you learn from your mistakes, you correct, you adapt, right? That makes you better prepared for the next time this happens. And that is what development is, that is what growth is. Effort is a good thing. It causes their intelligence to grow, right? You do those repetitions, you're not good at something, you keep repeating, you keep trying, and eventually you strengthen those pathways in your brain. And that is what growing your intelligence is, right? Growing your skills. Growth mindset people, after a setback, they step up their efforts and adapt their learning strategies. So you don't have to resort to cheating, right? You just have to figure out what went wrong this time. Let me do things differently. Let me adapt. I remember when I was in college and I would not do well on an exam, my high school self would have just not cared. But when I got to college, I realized, hey, if I didn't go to tutoring last time, let me go to tutoring this time. If I didn't watch YouTube videos on the topic, let me do that this time. If I didn't highlight the heck out of my textbook, let me do that this time. Right. And eventually I would do better. But it's all about adapting and stepping up those efforts and not giving up. Right, so I mentioned this earlier, right? The brain is like a muscle. It gets stronger with use. My growth is in my hands, right? I really like that little thought bubble there because that's kind of what it is, right? You flex those neural pathways, those pathways in your brain, and they get stronger, right? That can be a good thing or a bad thing. If you're practicing good things, you're staying positive, you're learning things that are going to help you develop, then that's great. But if you're always thinking negatively and you're trying and you're learning some bad habits, then that can be a bad thing, right? But intelligence is formed through effort and learning. And so I really like this picture right here. It kind of shows you those neural pathways, right? So you see that first one right there that says birth. Those connections are not very thick, right? Very bare looking. I always like to think of our pathways kind of like roads. And this road right here is not a very good road, right? The one where it says birth. And that road, it's like it would be missing chunks of the road, potholes all over the place, not even paved in some spots. And so that's kind of what's happening in that first image. The middle image at 15 months, the road is getting paved over. There may be some potholes and things like that. So it's not the best route for your thoughts to travel on, but it's getting better, right? And this again is showing you a baby at birth at 15 months, and then the last one right here at 2 to 3 years. You see, there are darker areas within these pathways, which means that there has been a lot of effort put into these pathways, and that's why they're getting thicker. That's why they're growing. And this is like a super well maintained 5 lane highway that no potholes, just even like those toll roads. There's not a lot of things to slow you down, right? And so this again is a birth 15 months and 2 to 3 year olds for a developing child. But you can think of this as any of those neural pathways. Think about studying for an upcoming interview or an exam or something that you had to kind of memorize or learn, right? If you didn't do much practice or put much effort into that, then you'll probably be here at like the birth area picture here. Not a lot of thoughts can flow freely, right? But if you get to that last one, 2 to 3 years, that is what, when I show this to my students, I tell them that's like if you study for the exam, you read your text, you highlight it, you watch videos, you talk to your classmates about it, then you will really thicken those neural pathways, right? And so I do want to end with a oops, kind of skipped around just for the sake of time. Um, an example of someone with a growth mindset. And I know she is controversial, a controversial figure, J.K. Rowling, but she does show in this regard a growth mindset. She struggled financially as an adult. She was a single mom living on welfare. I believe she was homeless for a while. And her book was rejected by 12 major publishing houses, right? She could have given up after the first rejection, the second one, the third, the fourth, but she kept going, right? She kept getting those rejection slips. I'm sure she adapted, right? Kind of made some changes here and there and kept submitting her work. And eventually it was published, right? And now she's one of the most famous authors on the planet. Right, there are other people who come to mind. I know Lincoln is one of those who just had several failures throughout his life, but he kept on persisting, and eventually he succeeded. Right, he met a ill-timed demise, but he was an example of that. Oprah Winfrey was also told she was not uh, fit for television. The Beatles were rejected by recording studios, and the list goes on, right? And these people, I'm not saying we're all going to grow up to be the next um Oprah or the next JK Rowling, but you don't know how high you can go if you give up before you even get anywhere, right? So just remember, the growth mindset is all about effort. You put that effort in, you strengthen those neural pathways, and then you get better at something, right? Whereas that fixed mindset person, they're more interested in just looking smart than actually growing and developing. So, which kind of person are you? And if you say that you're a fixed mindset person, that's fair. That I did start off as a fixed mindset person, but when I slowly started to adopt the growth mindset, it really helped my life out in all different areas of my life, education, my career, my family. These The fixed mindset is a very powerful idea, and it's basically just keep trying, right? Try something. If at first you don't succeed, just keep trying, right? Eventually, you will get better at a lot of different things that you want to improve in your life. So that is the growth mindset.